our panel discussion focused on local family businesses, which are based right here in Western New York, and the impact the COVID-19 pandemic is having on their enterprises. This virtual event is brought to you by the Niagara University College of Business Administration's Family Business Center, the Center of Excellence in Food Marketing, and the Center for Supply Chain Excellence, in conjunction with the university's Career Services Department. My name is Jack Ampuja, and at the university, I serve as executive in residence, which means I basically teach on the basis of my business experience, and I co-lead the Center for Supply Chain Excellence. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for you this afternoon. So before we go any further, a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, everyone should be aware that the session is being recorded, audio recorded. So please mute your microphones on your computers during the discussion. If you want to ask a question, type any question into the chat window. I and the participants will be able to see them. If things go the right way, we should have some time at the end of the session to answer a few questions. So thank you everyone for chiming in today. So now on with the program. Today we are pleased to have with us 4 business owners from Western New York. They represent a wide variety of different companies, yet all have been significantly impacted by the ongoing pandemic, as certainly everyone in the audience and on the system today has been. Life is not the same today as it was about 90 days ago. So to get us started, I'll briefly introduce each of the panelists and their organizations, and then we'll go on with some questions. First person being introduced today is Anne-Marie Kraft-Zisk, business owner of Kraftwerks. Anne-Marie is a graduate of Niagara University with a BS degree in transportation, physical distribution, and logistics. She's also a graduate of the University of Buffalo Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. Anne-Marie is somebody I've known for quite a few years, and although I knew she was connected to NU, I did not know that she had a degree in my specialty, which is logistics and physical distribution. Nowadays, we refer to it as supply chain management. Anne-Marie's previous work experience includes positions in the cargo airline and transportation industry, working for firms like Flying Tigers, Zantop International, RPS, which today all of us know as FedEx Ground, and Airborne Express. Anne-Marie serves on numerous local boards, including NU's Family Business Center, one of the sponsors of today's session, the Niagara Business Associates, the International Systems Dealers Association, the UB Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and the Hope Village for Survivors. Thank you for being with us today, Anne-Marie. Number 2, we've got Michael Irvin, President and CEO of Valu Home Centers. Back in 1980, which seems like eons ago, which wasn't, I certainly remember 1980, Mike was hired by Price Waterhouse and earned his CPA designation. He was promoted to the position of senior accountant in 1984 at Price Waterhouse. Later that year, he joined his family business, Valu Home Centers, as Vice President of Finance and Administration. In 1996, Mike was promoted to the position of President, and in 2015, he was named Chief Executive Officer. Today, Mike leads a company that totals 38 stores, employs over 900 people with locations in Western New York, Central New York, and Northwest Pennsylvania. And I count myself as one of the many customers that uses those stores. Good to have you with us, Mike. Number 3, we've got Scott J. Zagoda, President of Bison Bag Company. Scott is a graduate of Canisius College in 1999, stayed on to get his MBA. Also from Canisius. Scott has held the position of Executive VP of Bison Bag for almost 10 years during the 2000 era. He was promoted to president in 2010, so he's been in that slot for another 10 years. Scott and his wife live in East Amherst, not far from where I reside, and they and their family of 5 children. They participate in family sports and are active parishioners in the St. Mary's Swarmville Church, which I know exactly where that's located. I should tell everyone that when I first met Scott, he made the comment to me that I've remembered for many years. He said that if you think any other business is tough, Jack, he said, when I sell a bag, it goes for pennies. So imagine how many bags I have to sell to get to $1 million. Interestingly, I was a customer of Scott's company, when I worked in the corporate world, we used to buy products from them when I was a vice president of purchasing at Rich Products. And then later in the consulting racket that I'm involved with nowadays, Scott is one of my customers. So I've known him both as a customer and as a supplier to me. And then our fourth panelist is Timothy J. Polisano, president of Lincoln family of businesses. They've got a number of businesses, a very long history in transportation, a diverse company doing transportation, commercial and residential moving and storage, logistics, import, export. I know they're involved with the foreign trade zone here in Buffalo, and supply chain solutions, information security, data protection, general business support. Family business has been around for over 100 years at this point, going back to 1914. Tim has held various roles in this company, starting back in 1985, including sales, operations, and administration. Tim graduated from Niagara University in 1985 with a BS degree in transportation, which we like to hear. And I should also mention that on a personal basis, I know that Tim is a hockey player in local leagues. He and I have played in the same leagues, have not met each other on the ice, but we both are looking forward to slamming each other into the boards one of these evenings. Anyway, with that introduction, the process will be that we're going to have a general question that each of the panelists will take a crack at, and then we'll go back and we've got specific questions more directed to the types of businesses these people are involved with. And if we have time at the end, and I know the time will go by extremely quickly from having done some of these discussions in the past, the time will basically fly by for all of us. But assuming we'll have a little bit of time at the end, we will fit in some of the questions from the audience. So the general question is, how has COVID-19 pandemic impacted your family business? What has been the biggest impact to your company? And then, because we're all being isolated, some of the companies are working, some aren't, who are on the line today. But since we're in a different environment, how has this new virtual world of internet meetings, whether it's Zoom or free conference or WebAdvisor or whatever you've got, how is that working for you and for your business versus the in-person way of doing business that you've all been so familiar with for many years? So let's start with Mike Irvin from Valu Home Centers. Mike, what is your response to that little series of questions?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in today's podcast, and welcome all of the other participants. And full disclosure, just like Scott, I'm a Canisius College grad and previously member of the board, but always looked at Niagara University as a fellow Catholic institution, and had a lot of friends and family that graduated from there. So doing a lot of great things at Niagara. So the only time I won't cheer for Niagara is when they're playing Canisius in basketball, but we'll, otherwise I cheer for them regularly. So thanks again for inviting me. And you know, I pondered this question a little bit, and how has it impacted our family business? And I'd have to answer it by saying it's impacted every facet of our operation. You know, when this first came out, I don't think any of us were aware of the seriousness or the magnitude of this pandemic. And I look back at my calendar, it was about 8 weeks ago, and one of the real tipping points was when the NBA decided to suspend their season. And I look back, it was March 11th of 2020. And I said, wow, this thing's getting serious if the NBA is going to suspend. And I think we're right in the midst of March Madness, and the basketball games were being suspended. And so it was a serious matter. And then early in March, a couple days later, the Ohio schools shut down, and then New York followed suit. And then you remember Governor Cuomo had a shelter in place and stay at home and the pause order. And so we were very nervous and concerned and didn't know where we were going to be until we were determined that we were designated an essential business. I think we all realized that supermarkets would be in pharmacies, but nobody really knew what else would be considered essential. And when we finally got the word that hardware stores and home improvement stores would be classified essential, it was a big relief for us, because quite frankly, I didn't know how we could operate and successfully navigate through this difficult time if we weren't essential. And I know some of you may not have had that good fortune today. So through this whole thing, we've been essential, but we've really had to rebuild our business, and every facet, as I said, when early on I saw this as an issue. I saw what Home Depot and Lowe's I often follow the big leaders. You know, these are huge national companies, publicly traded, and they were right out of the gate saying that we've done a lot of things to try to create a safe environment. And as I talked to my family members and the other owners of our business, we said that you know, one of the things that's most important is that we have to consider the health and safety of our associates, our team, our managers, and of course our customers. We want to make sure it's a safe environment, otherwise they won't shop there. So we did a number of things, and they seem fairly routine now, but the social distancing and putting the tape on the floor. And you know, one day I heard about putting plexiglass shields at the registers, and I thought it was so silly, and 2 days later we're putting it on all of our stores. So one of the advantages we have as being a smaller family-owned business, we could quickly pivot and make those decisions that are important to ensure that we have the health and safety of our people. So, you know, we went from, you know, I put a list together of some of the things we did. Social distancing, of course, became prevalent, and of course, flattening the curve and sanitizing the stores was huge. And where do you get the sanitation from? And doing the research on finding all the proper materials. So we did a lot of things to ensure that as a essential retailer, we were creating that safe environment. Then we ultimately changed our hours of operation. We were open till 10 o'clock at night, and we cut our hours back to 6 p.m. so that we could ensure that our frontline employees had less exposure. We cut their hours back. We then ensured that we wanted to pause our advertising. We said, you know, what's the right thing to do? What's sensitive, that we want to make sure that we're not saying lowest price of the season, come on in, get these specials. And our managers and our associates are, you know, at the front line saying, why are you doing that? You know, this is an unsafe environment. And then the whole mask face covering thing came about, and who wears them, who doesn't wear them. And New York had different rules and regulations than Pennsylvania had, and we had to get our arms around that. And then, of course, we had to say, you know, let's be proactive here. What happens if someone does test positive in our organization? What do we do? Do we have to close down? Do we have to ensure that we inform the CDC, the Department of Health? And so lots of things happen. You know, how did it impact our business? It impacted every phase. But what I will say is we were fortunate that being in our business that we were deemed essential. And most importantly, we were there to help the customer. And we provided a lot of products, essential products that the customers needed. And again, they supported us. And one of the byproducts that we didn't realize is the big box shopping experience became very challenging. If you went into a Home Depot or Lowe's, oftentimes they limited the amount of people that could come in. The environment is not very friendly sometimes. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that our convenient shopping format was there to help the consumer. So every aspect of our business was impacted. We think we addressed it properly. We navigated through it. I'm blessed to have a veteran leadership established, as I said, a 10-person health and safety team that we met every day. I know the other part of the question is Zoom meetings. Every day we had a Zoom meeting that I thought would last for a week or so, and it just ended about a week ago, where we said we don't need to meet every day. Things have settled down. So those have been the how it's impacted our business. The biggest impact that I've seen is I'm just marvel at our team of employees and associates that just rise to the occasion. You know, we employ a lot of seniors, and some of them took a pause and said, you know what, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. My wife or husband or my kids don't want me to be involved in this. We said, perfectly fine. But the people that did stay with us, I was really amazed at at how they went to bat for us. And we followed many of the other retailers in the country, and we issued appreciation bonuses where we gave them cash bonuses for the job they did and being on the front line and doing just such a wonderful job. So we're blessed with many great people that work for us. Blessed at the time of need, they came, you know, they rose to the occasion, and really grateful for our customer base and our communities around Western New York and Central New York, that Northwest PA, that look to value for their shopping needs. So the last question about the Zoom meeting, you know, it works. It's functional, it's productive, but I'm in my office today, and there's something about being in the office with people. I miss that personal approach. I miss that social interaction. And we had several meetings today, and our large conference rooms, and we practice social distancing, and it was well received by all of us, and we missed those idle comments. Zoom and tends to be more business-like and structured. The in-person meetings have a little bit of the social interaction, which is we crave every day. So that's a real summary. I want to save time for others, and anxious to hear what others say. And again, thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you for your comments, Mike, that the comments you made about the social interaction and the personal relationships, those are exactly the same things we hear at the university from students, because we've gone to online education and we're getting the same reaction from students. I really miss being on campus, being in teams, talking to my professor, being with my colleagues, and so on. So it's a very, very common theme throughout society. So Tim Polisano, how do things look to you at the Lincoln Company family of business?
First of all, I'd like to thank Niagara for having me. I appreciate them giving me the chance to participate in this. Well, we weathered the storm, I think, pretty good. Financially, it definitely took a hit. There's no doubt about that. Being in the service business, we have, a lot of trucks, warehouses, and, one of our biggest things where we were deemed essential, but most of our customers, our business customers, were actually closed. So even though, we staffed, the warehouses, the trucks and stuff, we didn't really have much business probably the last 8 weeks, just because, most of our customers were closed. We had to furlough probably about 20 to 30% of our employees. We have between like 85 to like 110 employees, depending on the time of year. So we probably, furloughed about 20 to 30% of them. And then the other ones, we kept everyone on, but we really only had probably 20, 30% of the work that we normally have. So, we gave a lot of people days off and stuff like that, paid, of course. But, so we weathered it. We were in pretty good position before this happened. So, we see the glasses half full. I think every day now it seems like it's a little bit busier. Every day it gets better. So, it was as tough where we were at. I think the one thing too, being a family business, me and my brothers, there were situations, things were changing so quick that, really brought us together. And, our operations sort of differ. We're in the moving and storage, we're in the record storage, we're in the foreign trade zone business. So they're all sort of different businesses, but, we really weathered it pretty good, I thought. And like I said, I see better times ahead. We have great employees, a lot of them working for us well over 20 years. So, all the health, the safety, the sanitizing, the trucks, the warehouses, and a lot of places we really couldn't go to anyways, because, no one wanted to see us. And quite frankly, we really didn't want to, a lot of people, we don't want to be at risk either. So, because the welfare of our employees was paramount too. So, so with that being said, we do think it's going to be a lot better. I think the worst is behind us. As far as these Zoom meetings, WebEx, the different associations we're in, it seems like everyone's using them. It's probably going to be the thing of the future. But me personally, I'm more of a social guy. I like the breakfast meetings, that Niagara has. I like going to the lunch meetings, the cocktails, the golf out and stuff like that, the personal relationships. So, so that I sort of miss. And, I don't know if, when those will come back, but, for this stuff that we're doing now, the Zooms and stuff, I can live with it. The company, we have a lot of younger people that are doing really great with stuff like that, but I still would like to get back to some of the personal, social, business stuff, sooner or later.
Thank you, Tim. At your comment about the online kinds of meetings versus the personal touch, I'm getting the same kinds of questions from people about the university. Does this mean that the universities will be doing a lot more online? And I think the answer is probably some online, but most of us really value that personal connection, the interchange, speaking to somebody one-on-one, that cannot be duplicated the same way online. So it's a different world. We'll have to work through it. Scott Zagoda, how do things look to you up over at Bison Bag?
Jack, thanks for having me. Least out of that I know
Scott,
our primary food
Scott,
manufacturer.
Scott, let me interrupt you because
our
we're
customers have
having some
definitely done some
technical.
pretty quirky things over the last couple months, which we can touch on a later question regarding specific customer. But we've been busy. We had some spikes and then it's leveled off. So
Yeah, we're having a technical issue here, I think.
Jack, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're coming in now. Yeah, you froze up
All right.
for a second there, Scott. So go ahead. Start from the beginning.
All right. Our business hasn't been impacted a lot other than quirky customer behavior. But our business has been pretty steady, some highs, some lows, but pretty steady. Our supply chain's been very consistent over the last couple of months. So we haven't been impacted much in that regard. Our biggest challenges really have been employees and labor. I've had to have some people work remotely as much as we can, but out of our 90 so employees, probably 75 to 80 are essential to the manufacturing and then production. So we've just had to do a lot of accommodating within our facility to make sure we're keeping our employees safe. And when this started, probably similar to some of the other people, I kind of took it upon myself to be the leader, the champion of this and get all the facts. So I found myself just reading so much material and trying to get answers and then trying to communicate that information to my people. And I was giving them daily updates. I've since passed that on and we've named a COVID compliance officer now who's going to be doing all that. But that's really been the biggest challenge. And even today, we're still putting tape on the floor and we're just looking for different ways to change the traffic patterns and make sure that my employees are safe. There's some people are aggravated about it. Some people don't believe in it. Some people don't want to be told what to do. And I tell them, you can do whatever you want once you leave this building, but when you're in this building, it's our job to keep you safe. And that's really what we're doing. So trying to keep business as usual, but protecting people. As far as the Zoom, I of course like personal interaction more as well. But it is what it is. So it's either we have a phone call or we do Zoom. So as long as I'm not having the technical difficulties, I'm fine with it. But I absolutely would love to play golf and get out there and talk to people and see people. So just one day at a time, just trying to keep everybody safe and doing the best we can do.
Thank you, Scott. Anne Marie, how do things look to you from the Kraftwerks perspective?
Thanks for having me. This is a great panel of people here, and it's so good to hear people and interact with people and just to get feedback and hear what other businesses are doing and what they're going through. We were deemed essential very quickly. I remember getting the notice of the closing of the businesses and immediately got in touch with New York State because we had all these customers. We have we're kind of a two-part to our company in that we service businesses directly and are business to business, and then we also are subcontracting for general contract jobs, construction job sites. So our business to business, perhaps from the standpoint that we were servicing hospitals, food manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies, we were more or less called in for a lot of assistance in keeping them going and keeping their workplace safe, such as breaking down locker rooms to decentralize people and create more barriers and space between, and distribution centers, breaking down shipping lines and so on, just to help again segregate people and keep them safe. And I think the biggest thing in this whole was trying to keep our own people safe when they were going to the job sites. So early on, we adopted a lot of practices and and even when you go into some of these sites, you have to almost sanitize yourself before you go in, or wear masks, or I call them zoot suits, kind of zoot up and prepare to go and work in those areas. But I have to say we've been very, very blessed because we did not have any layoffs. We did not, our people have been outstanding and just jumping forward and trying to help our customers in any which way they can. The construction end of things is very, we had kind of a backlog of all work going on this summer, and they kind of pulled back. It said no construction, then they said essential construction, and most of our work was essential. But then each of those job sites have specific areas or criteria that we have to meet when we report on site, and keeping our guys safe when they report there is very important to us. So I keep stressing the importance of it. And I think that the biggest impact was this up and down, you're on, you're off, you're on, you're off, in terms of just the job sites, you know, the construction. But we just kept jockeying and refiguring and updating the employees as to where we stood. I think that with respect to the Zoom, it's getting the job done. It keeps things moving along, but I think like everyone else here said, I think that we'd all rather be meeting in person. It makes a much better conversation, much more impactful, and you just can read everything, body language and everything. So it's I miss it.
Yeah.
I hope I can see you all soon.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. There was one comment that Anne-Marie made that I wanted to touch on a little deeper, that she made the observation that it's so informative to listen to these other business owners. Obviously, the panelists all understand their own situations in excruciating detail, maybe painful detail. But when we did the last panel discussion like this, the biggest feedback from the participants was exactly what Anne-Marie said, that hearing what other businesses are doing, how they're contending with this, how they're having to respond, the panelists all found it extremely informative just to hear what others are going through and how they're coping with this. And I will pass on one other bit of information that wasn't in Anne-Marie's bio, but I happen to know that at one point Kraftwerks was a woman-owned enterprise being led by Anne-Marie and her mother. So I don't know if that's still true today, but that's the way it was structured at one point. Is that correct, Anne-Marie? Thank you. So while you've got the hot mic, Anne-Marie, let me go on to an individual question for you. Your company is focused on storage and storage equipment. And I know that because you've come to my classes to speak to my students. You also work with things like laboratory benches and fume hoods, workstations, lifts, and things like that to make work easier for people. So you're primarily focused on the manufacturing sector. What specific impact have you seen on the pandemic in your specific line of work? And are you seeing a need for any new product offerings or shifts in the way you go to market?
Right. So what I would say is that the immediate need is getting people to work. That's what we saw right away, was getting people to work in a safe environment. So it was different. I mentioned earlier that we went in and had to break down locker rooms. It was a pharmaceutical company that was making kits for the test kits. And so we got the call and they weren't sure that they were allowed to have us in. And they said, no, come in. And I said, we're essential, so we can do what you need to do. Just do your thing at your end. You do your due diligence, check to make sure that you're okay with having us come in. And they're like, well, we need to have it done and we're making kits. So they did their thing. We did ours, got in. What we're doing now is we created it's hopefully going to be up soon, just a web page that's dedicated to just the COVID and products that are going to help, hopefully help companies getting back to work. And what we noticed is that we were dealing with a lot of businesses that were essential. So they maybe are already ahead of the game and had developed some of the criteria and some of the spatial distancing that was needed. And immediately they knew it, they were made aware. We helped some of those companies get up to speed. What I'm going to be concerned about is those that are just coming back in to the workplace and what they're going to be doing. So I wanted to put out a website to say, basically, here we are. Here's a bunch of resources that we used initially. And this is a place where you can go to get information. And then a number of products that are just basically there to help people. And there's different ways to do that, but to help them either with their process, their flow, keeping certain distances, either visually or with a barrier, depending upon the work site and the space that they are looking to develop into redefined spacing and distancing. We're looking to employ those particular products or indicators. And then, as we always will do for our customers, we will come in and assist them with understanding what that might look like. If you can imagine, you have this a line of people or an assembly line of people or working or doing operations or kitting or assembly, and all of a sudden you have to create space between them. They need a method. How do we do that? So that's something that we will be looking to do, and it's a service that we will be providing for free. I look at this as really, it's our commitment to Western New York. I mean, this is what we do, and we're just committed to the area and helping companies get back. This is a very serious thing that this COVID-19, it's obviously just decimating some businesses, and our goal is to just help everybody get back to work and hopefully get past this as soon as possible. So it sounds a little bit like a commercial, but it's really my goal was really to look at and help people get back. And that's what we hope to do.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I know from past experience that your company is really focused on making better utilization of space, helping companies get better at using the space that they've got. And obviously this whole thing about isolation and greater space for workers puts you smack dab in the middle of it, that your customers will be looking to you for advice and for counsel on how do we do this. This should be this problem. Nobody looks for a problem, but for your company, it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
And then Scott Segota, you're also smack dab in the middle of the food industry. You make products for food processors and for food manufacturers, so you're an integral supplier to the food industry. You've already alluded to this a little bit, Scott, but what kinds of things have you seen in your customers' buying patterns that have changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks, Jack. Our business is probably 95% and upward goes to the food industry. We have a healthy balance between retail food products as well as food service. So initially we saw a huge spike in retail food products, and customers were just going crazy with large orders, well outside of what they normally order. And then some of them a week or two later would cancel those orders or reduce them or ask us to hold them longer. And food service with restaurants initially shut down, we saw that dry up quite a bit. But we also do a lot of institutional stuff that goes into prisons, and with school lunches being still made available to children, even where there is no school, we've seen some of that pick back up. So like I said a little bit earlier, it's just been really quirky where customers don't seem to know exactly what they want or what they need. They're changing things at an extremely high rate to where my customer service people are constantly changing orders, running back to production, sometimes right after getting off the phone to change things up. So it's been very, very chaotic and hectic in terms of the ordering patterns. With retail stuff just flying off the shelf originally when people were stocking up and thinking they would have to stay within their house for 4 weeks or more. So we saw certain products just fly. Again, that has slowed down. So We did see a spike where we had a lot of overtime going on here. And then over the past probably 3-4 weeks, we've seen things level off. So if I look back over the last 10 weeks to when this started, I could probably draw a straight line through it and it would be pretty level, even though we've had the major spikes. I think a lot of it was just paranoia and buying patterns of people, but things have leveled off. And where certain customers do a lot in food service, where their food service has dried up, they've seen huge increases in retail. One customer told me their food service basically evaporated to nothing and their retail is up 150%. So fortunately for them, kind of like myself, they're able to reallocate their spikes because they're seeing things below much. You can go out and buy as many meatballs or pasta or frozen vegetables you want, but you're still only going to consume it. So if you buy 50 bags of frozen corn today, you're not going to be buying frozen corn for a while. So that's probably the most interesting thing of all of it. But we keep moving ahead. And like Anne Marie was saying, you know, we're trying to be here for our customers, knowing the uncertainty they're dealing with. We're just trying to make it as easy as possible and be as helpful as we can to them.
Thank you, Scott. One of the things that comes to mind from listening to Scott's comments, the last time we did one of these panel discussions, we heard from a couple of big companies like Clorox that does hand sanitizer, Procter & Gamble, that's a big supplier of paper products, paper towels and toilet tissue. They have reduced their product offering, that instead of running 25 products in a factory, they're now running 2 or 3, just continuous production on a couple of key items, because those are the things flying off the shelf. The question long haul for those companies is, once you give up that shelf space, will it be there when you want to go back in 6 months? And will you ever want to bring those secondary products back? There'll be a lot of questions to be answered in a company like Bison Bag. You're in the middle of this, Scott, that all these people are looking to you as an intermediate supplier for them. So that's obviously going to have a big impact on your business going forward. So Tim Polisano, Lincoln Moving and Storage. Your company has both residential as well as commercial customers. How has the pandemic impacted both of these segments? And are you seeing ups and downs in any one of those two segments offsetting, or are you seeing similar reactions? And are you conducting business differently with any kinds of technologies in response to this? And any of these changes that you're undergoing, do you see them continuing into the future, Tim?
Yes, I would say both residential and commercial business were both down. The reason why residential business was down is most of the house closings, I think by April 1st, they stopped, the county stopped, authorizing to have house closings. So that really affected the residential business. And like I said earlier, I don't think people really wanted, you to come over to their houses, and us vice versa. Commercial business, like I said, all our businesses do a lot of business to business, and the only maybe upswing in all of that was we were moving a lot of the schools and some of the hospitals. So the schools was mostly student storage, where when the kids had to leave the dorms and everything, they left all their stuff there because a lot of them had to leave quick. So that was actually probably the one uptick in our business for the commercial business. So like as far as the factories and, office buildings, stuff like that, no one, no one moved at all the last 8 weeks in that segment. That stuff was just postponed. I don't think most of that's lost. I think it's just been postponed. And like I said, a lot of stuff is starting to get rescheduled now, but so that's behind us. As far as technology, we started doing a lot of virtual surveys because, we don't want to go to people's houses and they don't want us to come in. So that was coming in our industry anyways, because it was just a lot more effective, I think, instead of meeting someone every time for an appointment or an estimate. So we started doing a lot of virtual surveys instead of on-site surveys. So I think for residential moving, that'll just increase. As far as commercial moving, I don't think that would increase. I think you still got to go depend on what the, sometimes they're plants or whatever. So as far as technology, I don't think that's going to affect that segment that much. But like I said, both those segments now, every day it's getting better on those things. But the last 8 weeks, they were pretty dead.
Thank you, Tim. And just a reminder for all of the audience online, you've got a chance to submit questions, submit them into the chat room, and we'll be able to pass those on to specific participants, panelists, to answer a question that you'd like directed to a specific person. And I've got one here for you, Tim, and it has to do with the Canadian border. The Canadian border, of course, is closed to all of us as individuals. Businesses can move freight back and forth. Your company runs the foreign trade zone here in Buffalo. Have you seen any big impact to your business on the closure of the border to Canada?
Yeah, ours is, trucks can come through, but the problem is the warehouses, the factories, some of the factories you would get product from in Canada, they were all closed. So, the border was open, but, where these products came from, most of those places were closed. So, we got very few shipments the last 6 weeks. They just started coming in this week, which is encouraging, but, yeah, they could cross the border, but unfortunately, most of those companies where this stuff comes from was closed in Canada, and some of them still are closed.
So, Tim, do you think this is going to be a big snowball rolling down the hill toward Lincoln, moving in storage once the border is fully open to everyone?
Yeah, like I said, I think most of our customers, everyone wants to just catch up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't think most of our customers are pretty solid, so I don't think any of them are gonna, not make it. But I think most of them all want to catch up.
Okay,
So
thanks, Tim. Mike Irvin, what have you seen as the major impact of the pandemic on store operations? You already mentioned the plexiglass shields at the cash register, and I was at one of your stores the other night, and I did see that shield for the first time. Have there been other changes like that? And how about items that you're selling? Obviously, people are trying to buy things like hand sanitizer. Are you running into short supply on key items? How does that piece of the retail operation look to you, Mike?
Okay, Jack, thank you. Good questions. Once we determined, or it was determined, that we were essential, like all of the other participants here today, we're a family-owned Buffalo-based business, and we do give back to the community quite generously. And we thought it was our duty and responsibility to find some of these products that everyone was looking for. We couldn't find any toilet paper or wipes, but what we did find is some hand sanitizer. And again, Buffalo, the way it works here, I think many of you know, some of the local distillers changed from distilling vodka and gin, and they started making hand sanitizer. So we bought a bunch of stuff from Uncle Jumbo's here, right in the Clarence distillery, and literally they bottled it up in whatever bottles they could, and we got it out to our stores. We had our district managers coming in and getting it out there, and it wasn't about making money. I think we sold it at or near our cost. It was just about, again, helping the community. We tried all of our resources to find masks. They were in huge demand, very difficult to find. We finally found some from some of our sources, and today we do have some masks in place. I think, like anything in the supply chain and supply and demand, you pay a certain price for an item today. What's it going to be 2 or 3 months from now when the supply is in place? So we're again, we're not doing this to make money. We're doing it to supply and to help the communities. But one of the big things that impacted us too was our people. We're proud to have 900 employees, and we employ a lot of part-timers and a lot of seniors, and some of them again took pause and wanted to take themselves out of the workplace, and we said that's fine. But the other ones, stayed on. We didn't have any furloughs, but we've been blessed that business has been brisk, and in fact, it's been strong, especially as the weather changed and people were home and they had, they wanted to take care of their homes. It's even more central to their lives. And I think a lot of it, talking to customers, is, look, I'm not going to Disney World this year. I'm not going on vacation. We're not going to Italy. We're not doing this or buying a car, but we want to fix up our homes. So we benefited from that, and that our market share increased. and our convenient store format really came through, where a consumer was comfortable. But we had to make sure that we created that safe working environment in our stores, or shopping environment, I should say, as well as working environment. So again, sanitation carts, that was new to us, a whole cleaning regimen that was new. Something as simple as taking the bathrooms offline for customers. Sorry about that, but our employees were saying, I don't want customers using our bathrooms. Who knows where they were? And that was something I never considered. I said, you're right. We have to do what's right for our employees to keep them safe and secure. So things like that we have to done. But what we're finding now is that the supply chain is getting to be a little crimped. Some of the manufacturing plants have closed down. We sell one product called Sterilite, which is all those storage bins. I'm sure many of you have bought them for all of your stuff that you put in there. It's great during the holidays. But that plant based in Ohio closed down because it had a bunch of COVID incidents. So if you're down for a month not manufacturing, you can imagine the backlog. And we have usually about a month or 6 weeks supply of merchandise, but after that we don't. So right now we're very low on that product. All of seasonal items, again, usually lawnmowers and grills and items like that, we sell right through July. We're almost out of those items now, and outdoor furniture, and the consumer has bought many of those items in advance, and in an effort to embellish their home and their store and their backyard. Fire pits are huge, those fire pits that people use. So whatever we sold that, again, is in the outside entertainment, something to embrace your home, literally has sold out. One of the big, believe it or not, product lines is bird seed. People love feeding the birds. And in fact, I think many people were sitting home with not a whole lot to do, and they liked watching the birds. It's kind of a nice pastime. So we've had to adjust to these supply shortages. How we can continue to get some of these items like Scott's fertilizer and some of the seasonal items, grills and lawnmowers, might not be able to get. These manufacturers build their supplies months ahead of time. So we're looking at other resources. Instead of a Weber grill, we might have to find some other source. But again, very difficult to find some of those hot seasonal items. And I'm concerned about, did we move all of those sales into the early part of the spring, and there won't be much merchandise for us as well as others that are in our business to sell going forward. But it's a nice problem. We're glad we were there to help the consumers, and glad to help people who are concerned about their home and want to make spending as much time in their backyards to make their home central to their lives. So lots of changes, but we think we adapted well to it.
Thanks, Mike. One of the comments that Mike made was how the supply chain is getting crimped, and then supply being a little uncertain, factories closed, and so on. One of the things we learned just a few weeks ago from a local retailer, from Joe Dash of Dash's Food Markets, he was trying to get paper towels, could not get paper towels or toilet tissue from any of his normal sources, found a secondary supplier that had access to Procter & Gamble product in a warehouse in New Jersey that had to be priced coming out the door, had to arrange for your own transportation. So Dash has arranged for a local trucker here to go down, pick up the truckload of paper products, bring them back, assume the guy would pick up the stuff in the morning, be back here the following evening. They got a call from the driver saying, I wanted to let you know I'm on the job for you. I'm here in line. There's a 3-mile backup of trucks waiting to pick up at this warehouse, so don't expect me back in Buffalo anytime soon. Those are some of the kinds of things that aren't evident to the consumer here. It's not that people don't have product and aren't trying to get it, but the system is getting plugged up because of these changes in supply and demand that Mike has mentioned. We do have a specific question here, Mike, that I'd like to have you handle. And one of the questions is, what are you as a leader or leadership team at Valu Home Center doing to update your employees on this situation? Obviously, they're very interested in what's happening and so on. And then what format do you use to get information out to your people? Is it memos? Is it meetings? Is it Zoom? How are you handling that at Valu Home Center, Mike?
Well, thank you. Good question. So first of all, we think it's very important to be transparent with your employees, and also there's lots of uncertainty out there, and there's lots of unknowns. And quite frankly, a lot of employees I spoke to, they were scared. They didn't know what was in store for them. And a lot of them thought they're going to lose their job. And again, we were proud of the fact that we did not furlough or lay anyone off. But we have a payroll system called Paylocity, which they have to log into every time that they punch in at the store. So that sends out message to them. So we had sent a number of messages early on telling about all the things we were doing to keep the store safe and sanitize and social distancing and masks and changing our hours, and of course the employee appreciation bonus that we enacted. So we would communicate to them through our payroll system, which is a very robust system that works well. We also have a strong line of communication amongst our team. I'm an owner-operator that hands-on. I think it's important to be in the stores. I spent the weekend visiting 15 different stores. This is always our busiest time of the year, Memorial Day weekend. And I personally know many of the managers. I know all the managers. I know a lot of our associates. And there's something was comforting to me, and also just there to thank them for a job well done. Again, they're on the front line. So we did a lot to educate them, and we're continuing to do more. And we're continuing to learn too. I think as I don't know if I think Scott, who said he was the champion, I did the same, and I tried to learn from others, and I have no shame in learning from Home Depot and Lowe's. And in fact, I made daily visits to Wegmans because I think very highly of them as an operator and as a retailer. And I saw what they did and how they handled this pandemic. And there's not a lot of new ideas. We can borrow ideas from others. And I borrowed a lot from Home Depot and Lowe's and Walmart and Wegmans. And these are industry leaders, and why not? We're a small regional company that don't have the resources that these big boys have. So we can all learn from everybody, and I think many of us have. So.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Just a time check here. We're 50 minutes into the 60-minute presentation, so we've got about 10 minutes to go, so time for a few more questions. Tim Polisano, your company is based in a number of different states. What are you seeing in the differences between New York State, that's very heavily regimented, as all of us know? I watch Andrew Cuomo on television every day at lunchtime. What differences do you see between operating here versus a Florida that appears to be very wide open as an operating state?
Yeah, our Florida office, they're the one company that actually performed better in April this year than they did last year, where everyone else was behind. So, and we never had to furlough anyone in Florida, but we have a different strategy down there. We do subscription box fulfillment. So a lot of e-commerce. So, that business was going crazy because everyone was sitting at home ordering online. So, everything when you get UPS, FedEx in the mail, that's sort of what we do down in Tampa. So, so we sort of flourished down there. And like you're talking about the regulation, not that we're having trouble getting people back to work up here. We haven't really brought many people back yet, but down there, some of their benefits for like unemployment stuff is a lot less than New York. But it's just a different state. I mean, there's less regulation, and we're glad we have an office down in Tampa. We've been down there since 1983. So that was my first job when I got out of Niagara. So it was a great place to go to right out after school. So it's definitely a different environment, a little bit more friendly for business.
Thanks, Tim. Scott Segota, what will you do at Bison Bag if one of your employees goes for COVID testing and tests positive? How will you handle that?
That's something I've given a lot of thought to, and I don't have an answer yet, to be quite honest. We have had maybe 3 employees get tested, maybe a little bit more. All have tested negative. We did find out about 2 weeks ago that an employee tested positive for the antibodies. So we know it was here at one point through him, but I don't know yet. We kind of have a plan in place that we of course would notify everybody that somebody tested positive. It's really a fine line too with the HIPAA laws, how much we can tell people, how much we need to tell people, how much we should tell people. And then we would look at the tracers, who is that person in regular contact with, when did they start feeling ill, those kinds of things. So it would kind of be, we would learn on the fly as that happened. We are taking the precautions of checking temperature every single day, doing our quick questionnaire of do you feel okay? Have you had any symptoms? Things like that. We have had people, probably a dozen to 15 that have shown symptoms, and we've just asked them to stay home for 2 weeks. Again, I guess that's the best I can answer that question. We'll cross that bridge when it happens, but we do have kind of the game plan that we would immediately notify all the employees that somebody tested positive, and of course they would figure out pretty quickly who it was, and we would just do our best to keep everybody else safe and deal with it.
Thanks, Scott. Anne-Marie, let me have you take this one, and I'll bounce it around to a few others as we head toward the close here. Put your crystal ball on the table and kind of think ahead. One of the questions from the audience is, when do you expect things to be back in full swing in the U.S. economy? I don't know if any of us knows, but what's your sense over there at Kraftwerks?
My gut's telling me that we're seeing a delay. I think we're on, I'm sorry to think, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm hopeful that the president and Congress and the Senate can get together and put the country first and really organize their thoughts and get some very good incentives to manufacturers to bring manufacturing back to the United States. And if for no other, get the critical essential items that we need in our own economy and get control of those. So I'd really like to see the focus on that. I think that they will look that way. I do think, however, that we are on the front of this, and they would have to react very quickly. And I think if they react very quickly, that we would be looking at, I think we're looking at about an 18-month recovery. We're in construction, so we're also looking forward. So what I watch the activity from the construction standpoint and all the bidding activity. Some of that's been put on hold. New York State would be obviously very impacted with our budget we're in pretty bad shape here. Maybe the country as a whole would fare in general a little bit better. If I go back and look at the history of all the recessions that we've been through, and I've been around long enough and to have gone through a few of these, we're always the last one to come out in New York. And so my crystal ball says it's about 18 months. If we're lucky. I think I just read not too long ago that we just actually caught up with the rest of the country on the last recession. That's a long time. So I think that Buffalo, Western New York, we're in a little bit better position to rebound, but we'd have to have some help with, I think we're going to have some help in New York.
Okay. Thank you. There was somebody who's on the commercial industrial side. Mike or Lena, your company is directly in retail. What's your sense? What does your crystal ball tell you about the recovery period that we're looking at?
Well, those are difficult questions. I just read an article, I think today or yesterday, from Business First that said that the Buffalo suffers the third worst job loss in the nation because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's concerning to us as a retailer. One of the things that's been helpful, obviously, is the stimulus package and the government helping a lot of the consumers out there. I think you're all aware also of the unemployment, how that was increased and people had additional unemployment funds. But all of that stuff is scheduled to go away sometime soon. So my concern dealing with the consumer is, will they run out of money and not be employed and then say, where am I going to spend, or what money do I have to spend? So right now, again, there seems to be some money out there and people are spending. So I don't have a prediction, meaning that I don't know. As I said, we've been blessed with some pretty strong sales just because of us being in the home improvement business, and people are looking to improve their home. Will that change again as the months go on? And quite frankly, what items will we have available to us? The supply chain may impact whether we as a business can provide items for the consumers because of the supply chain. So, but I am seeing some positive things. Anne-Marie's comments are concerning 18 months. That's a long way off. I'm hoping that we're watching football in September, but I don't know. I don't know if we'll be in the stadium, but maybe we'll be watching it. But lots of unknown, lots of uncertainty, and I really don't know where we're going with it. The only thing, we used to plan out 6 months, 6 weeks, our advertising. Then we planned out 2, 4 weeks. Now we're almost planning it out by the day. We changed some of our advertising models for this weekend. So it's very challenging. We got to go by your gut a lot. But you also have to look at some of the analytics and see where we're trending. But I'm hoping by the end of the year, we'll see some light at the end of the tunnel here. That's my prediction.
Thank you, Mike. And we've reached the end of the line here. 60 minutes is up. We're right at 4 o'clock, a little bit after. So that's the end of the panel discussion. I obviously don't have any better crystal ball, but I tend to line up closer with Anne-Marie. I was much more positive about this thing like 60 days ago, but as it's going on, it appears that it's much more complicated. Will take more time than any of us like, but we'll all know a whole lot better. Perhaps we'll pull this panel together again early next year and take another look at the temperature, take a look at the businesses, and see how well companies reacted and how the whole thing played out and everybody's sphere of the world. So thank you all for participating, Anne-Marie, Tim, Scott, Mike, and for everybody that submitted questions. And look forward to participating with some of you next week when we do another one of these. So that's the end of the session today. Thank you all for attending.